One of the elements of trusting someone to effectively be a voice for your company, which is a very precious thing. It's a very high bar. But the cool thing about the process that you all have built is, at least in the early stages, it's really iterative. For example, my company, we work with you to publish our newsletter on a weekly basis. So once a week, there's been a reiteration to me that the quality and the perfectionism and the alignment with my vision of what an email to my customers looks like is reinforced. And that's a beautiful thing, because it's much easier than the alternative, which is having your hands on everything, micromanaging every keystroke. And that's just not what you should be doing at a certain point when you're building a startup.
Jesse, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for chatting today.
100%. Excited to catch up. For people who don't know, can you tell me a little bit about HiTide? I know you're one of the co-founders, so I'm kind of curious also to hear the founding story, backstory of the company, and we'll start there.
Yeah, sounds good. So I am one of 3 co-founders of HiTide. HiTide is a messaging platform for primarily Shopify brands. We serve the kind of broader commerce space, but most of our customers today are Shopify brands. And what we do specifically is we help brands to engage their social audiences to drive growth of their owned channels like SMS and email. HiTide started as an SMS growth solution out of kind of an insight that there had not been a ton of innovation in the SMS list growth and opt-in space. And then at the same time, there was this kind of transformative change where the social platforms were opening up direct messages and messaging to third-party developers like HiTide. And so we've, as of our chat today, we've been building this platform for about a year. We have a bunch of brands of all sizes using the platform, and starting to see some really exciting results and a ton of list growth coming out of social. So that's in a nutshell what we do, and excited to dig in.
It's awesome. And then present day, it exists as a Shopify app. Is there an additional kind of platform outside of that? How does the actual platform function?
Yeah, great question. Let me break it into kind of 2 buckets. I'll first briefly describe the user or customer experience that someone, just your average consumer, me or you, experiencing HiTide in the wild might see. And that's a brief description. And then I'll talk a bit about the software and what our brand customers see. So
Perfect.
As a consumer, you probably have a bunch of brands you're interested in. Maybe some of them you're following on Instagram and TikTok and maybe even Facebook. For consumers that are following brands on Instagram, as a user, I sometimes want to engage with content. A brand might have a post about a new product that's dropping, maybe a piece of content that resonates with me as a consumer that I want to tag a friend in. Or maybe they're running some sort of promo, a 4th of July sale, a giveaway. You get the picture. These are, obviously common brand marketing techniques. As an Instagram user, if I am kind of raising my hand that I'm interested in this content by commenting or maybe even just directly DMing the brand has an opportunity to send a direct message to me, an automation. And that automation, in our case, asks for consent to add the user's phone number or email into my brand marketing's own channel. So as a consumer, that might look like, hey, awesome, so glad you're excited about the drop of the new, hat colorway that's coming out next week. Do you want me to notify you when it's available, when it's dropping? We think it's going to go fast. And as a consumer, I can respond to that message by saying, yes, here's my phone number, text me when this product becomes available. So that's the kind of like default consumer experience. For a brand, what a brand can do is multiply that sort of interaction across many different campaign types and posts and many different consumer interactions or conversations. And brands specifically can use HiTide to connect this messaging API that allows them to send messages to consumers on social with their own channels like email or SMS. Think PostScript, Attentive, Klaviyo, all the big players plus. And finally, what HiTide does as a really important part of the value prop is connects basically insights and analytics to each campaign. So as a brand, if I'm posting about the new hat drop that's coming next week, I collect a bunch of phone numbers and consent to send those people my marketing messages. I want to know how much that activity actually drove for me in terms of revenue. And so the final piece and magic in HiTide is that we close the loop. We're integrating into Shopify. We pull back data on downstream purchases and tie it to an individual story or organic campaign on Instagram or even a paid ad. And so this whole suite we call, HiTide. It's a software. It's technically a Shopify app. You access it and pay for it by integrating to Shopify. But it's actually kind of an app, a website where you can set these campaigns up, measure these campaigns, and hopefully drive a ton of revenue from your social that you weren't doing before.
It's a sweet platform, and we can talk more at the end. Obviously, you know how much we believe in owned media. So yes. As much as you can grow the pure quantity of people in owned media, the more powerful all of those efforts are. So my next question is why you decided to work with Orbit Marketing. I know we initially met at actually a direct-to-consumer running club. Even though I'm not Ecom guy, I like the space, so I just showed up and I like running. But why did you, what was it about either Orbit Marketing or the needs in email marketing in general that drew you to work with us?
Well, timing was perfect. So as a team, we've stayed pretty lean and scrappy. It's a small startup team. Our product is starting to see success and has been for the last, 6 months or so as we moved from this kind of closed beta, maybe even alpha MVP type stage to driving results for customers and having more customers. As we moved into the point of the tipping point in the number of customers we had, I had to make a change in the way that we were communicating to those customers. It used to be when we had, 30 customers, I would individually reach out to every customer on any major change we made to the platform, whether that was a new feature, whether that was, a planned event we were hosting. And that would happen by email, by Slack, by text message. And that's really fun because you can stay close to the customers. But at a certain point, you kind of realize, when you're shipping rapidly, like we are as a team, the one-to-one just doesn't really work. The wheels start falling off. And so right before I met you, I had a couple cases where we'd shipped a really great product, like an update to the existing product, which we do ideally on a weekly basis. And I realized that we hadn't told anybody that really needed this thing that we had shipped it. Like we had, sent some messages out, but we missed some key people. And I realized that something had to change. We had to figure out a way to get to all of our customers on a regular basis. And I had been planning, kind of as a no-brainer to set up an email newsletter. I knew that, just one of the kind of no-brainer things that you have to do when you're running a software business. But I had been delaying it because I'm not a fast writer. I'm not a terrible writer. I'm just really slow. And I knew that it would take me probably 4 or 5 hours out of my week to put together something to send that I would be proud of, which was not just a quick one-liner on the feature update, but instead had other relevant stuff that gave people a reason to open that newsletter on a daily basis. Industry news, tips and tricks, events that we had going on. It's a lot to manage and keep track of. And I was kind of grappling with the I need to do this feeling, but also not having the available time. And when we met and you described, how your company works and the kind of content machine that allows us to, kind of step back a bit, provide the top level of what we want to communicate, and then come out and on the other end with, something that's near ready to go, we can put our final touches on to reduce that work from 4 or 5 hours down to 20 minutes or less for me as a founder. So that's what led us to talk, and we've been happily working together for some time now, and really excited by the results so far. Definitely seeing some interesting impact.
I think one thing that's really fun about the way that we collaborate is you weren't doing nothing on content before, right? We weren't taking you from zero. You already produce a kind of Friday weekly video where you discuss the updates, but and that's really helpful for us. And it lets you kind of take additional value from that, right? It's kind of the classic. A lot of there's kind of two non-competitive beliefs about marketing. A lot of people say you have to try to be everywhere. It's really, if you only built a platform on one place, the world's big enough on every single major platform where you can just focus there and still get a lot of customers.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, I'm getting a bit of echo. I might turn your echo cancellation on. I don't know if I can. I think it's fine. So I was saying that on the other side, if you're already producing content in one place, you might as well put it everywhere, right? You say to beginners, only put content in one place because there's just a lot to do. But then once you have budget, you might as well put it in all the other places and extract more value out of it.
Right. Yeah. That kind of repurposing of stuff we're already doing. What I enjoy most about our process together is there's certain things that I'm already doing that you guys are kind of just keeping track of and dropping into our content machine to put into the newsletter, repurpose it, take the appropriate pieces. And that's beautiful. And then, filling it out beyond, filling the content out beyond what I'm doing already in my video posts, for example. An email post and a video post are very different. The video post, kind of acts as a piece of content within a broader set. It's probably, given that I'm talking about it on a weekly basis to our LinkedIn video audience, it's probably the most important thing. But people want to open that newsletter up and get some additional value out of it. And not everyone gets the same value out of the same pieces. So you have to have, I think in my view, and I know we've talked about this, probably 3 or 4 different angles or pieces of update content, whatever, in that newsletter. For the video, on the other hand, it's short form. I try to keep my video LinkedIn updates to less than 2 minutes. It's very unproduced. It's a Friday bit selfie video, talk about what we're excited about. Usually there's a product update in there, and then we talk about new partners, events, etc. And so the idea that can kind of just continue to happen as is, but then go on to live outside of just that channel in a way that's really cost effective and that we can actually measure the results of, that's really cool.
Yeah. I think, as you kind of mentioned, for a lot of people, just getting in front of a camera for 2 minutes is quite easy, and you share a ton of ideas. When you tell that same person to sit on the keyboard, make it this whole polished newsletter, and then that's when the PTSD from school sits in, and you just become allergic to it.
Totally.
But you had mentioned some interesting results you've already seen from doing the newsletter. I'm interested to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's mostly around customer feedback. So people reaching out that either had gone cold previously, that happened literally just last night, or people that weren't aware of a feature, even though we've kind of talked about it in other channels and tried to highlight it in the software. So this mix of both customers that were, that are prospects really, popping their heads back up because we caught their attention, or current customers that are like, I'm already really happy and I just learned about something new I can do. Now I'm even happier, in a one-to-many type of way that's super valuable for me. So when I get that reply back for a customer, I know that there's, probably 10 other people, maybe it's like a 1-to-10 ratio that I reached through that email blast that wouldn't have otherwise known what's going on with HiTide that week or what value we've added to the platform. I usually find that if one person raises their hand, it means that there's probably nine other people that had a similar experience that didn't say anything. So that's the similar way we look at bugs, for example. If one customer is complaining that something's like annoying or clunky, we just kind of assume at our scale today, we assume like, okay, there's probably at least 10 people that have encountered a similar thing. That translates to the positive side as well. If someone raised their hand and is like, hey, I just learned something new, thank you, and how can we take action on it? There's probably 10 other people where that like idea from a chunk of text that's been delivered as an email to their inbox gets added to their mental priority stack, and hopefully will allow us to drive better business outcomes for ourselves and our customers.
Now, I think that's a super interesting principle. I wonder actually if there's any like observability you have into that from like the Instagram side of things, maybe like, the story views to opt-in rate. Like you probably have like, there's probably just like a real psychological human pattern here, where if you're like a brand who posts that story about the hat and there's like that ratio of views to opt-ins and kind of those just are consistent numbers across the portfolio.
Yeah, totally. And then there's, of course, as you know, for brand marketers, there's the age-old question of attribution, where, okay, someone has seen something, recognized something, and then at some point in the future, they take action on it. It's not always possible to tie back that, I saw the ad for the hat, and then I went to happy hour and I saw Lewis had the same hat, and I thought it was cool. And then, 3 weeks later, I was bored standing in line at the grocery store, and I decided to go ahead and make my purchase from, I Googled the hat, clicked on the Google search result. Google's getting the credit, most likely, but what's the real story? It's more in-depth and complex. We're never going to know what the full, path to some sort of a customer action is. And that translates directly to my stuff, where I'm like, okay, when someone is trying a new campaign type in HiTide. Since we're now at the point where we're not talking to every customer weekly and people are empowered to get results out of our software on their own, like, okay, they just launched this new campaign type. Was it because they saw my Friday LinkedIn video? Was it because the email that Lewis and team helped me put together reached them last week? Or did they go into the UI and see the little like what's new flag in the UI? It's probably one of those. It's probably all of those. And I just know that more is better when it comes to communicating, especially if you can do it in a way that adds value to people.
Definitely. What would you say to someone kind of on the fence about working with Orbit marketing, whether they're in your same position, they already knew they needed a newsletter and they just thought they're going to do it themselves, or if they're not quite there yet even?
Yeah, I would say just do it. The thing that was really helpful and easy for me was getting to that concept of like first issue. You don't even, I don't know what you would say about this, but I would say you don't even need to necessarily publish that first issue. Just go through the process and take a week, do what kind of we did together, a week where you kind of as a founder or, whoever your customer is, you're, starting this like kind of week time frame. You're adding a mental task to yourself of these few different pieces of content that I'd like to talk about. Let's just write down a one-liner about each of these things throughout the week, and then lean on Orbit to put together a draft and see how easy it is. And if you can't turn what would otherwise be 4 or 5 hours of work into like 20, 30 minutes, I'd be really surprised.
I appreciate that. I think that's something important that we've learned is you just have to give people something to react to. It's like they say they don't know what they want, and then you show them something and they're like, that's great, or that's terrible. It's like, okay, great. Now we have information. Give us a couple days, make a revised version. Like it's almost, we have to kind of play a fine line here, but giving someone something they won't necessarily like, they will finally tell you what it is that they do like. And then we've arrived at that information. It's like, okay, great. The end result is what you want now. Sorry to have to play these games with you, but
we've been cool. I mean, it's like one of the elements of trusting someone to effectively, be a voice for your company, which is a very precious thing. It's a very high bar. But the cool thing about the process that you all have built is, at least in the early stages, it's really iterative, and you have as a customer of Orbit, you have the ability to make a bunch of changes early on to get to your unique kind of like spin on content, your unique voice, the topics you like to talk about, the things that are important to you that are going on in the company. And so you can build up that trust level. And so those like the kind of like rapid iterations tell me as a customer, like, I hear you. Here's what I'm giving back as a very specific and clear change that's been made based on your feedback. Run that cycle a bunch of times, and you're going to have something that works. And then like phase 2 of the trust building that we went through together is consistency. All right, we, for example, my company, we work with you to publish our newsletter on a weekly basis. So once a week, so far, there's been a reiteration to me that the quality and the perfectionism and the alignment with my vision of what an email to my customers looks like is reinforced. And so, if you as a founder are, hesitant about giving up control, you can go through that experience and you can realize, I'm actually not giving up any control. And I also see the output every week. And so anytime anything, needs a tweak, I can do that. And that's a beautiful thing because it's much easier than the alternative, which is having your hands on everything, micromanaging every keystroke. And that's just not what you should be doing at a certain point when you're building a startup.
I've thought through 2 little bonus questions specifically for you. And, who knows, maybe one day when we have, this will be live on YouTube already at some point, and we'll have an editor, and maybe we'll get into making clips for people, like an add-on service or a freebie, who knows. But we're going to have an editor, so that just makes me excited as I'm already in the content business to have new mediums open up to us. So 2 questions for you. What is your number one tip so you, again, are overseeing tons of ecom brands. What is your number one tip to ecom brands in general? Like your piece of advice, what's working right now, or you've seen lots of brands do well, not work so well. Like what is your thing that you're just, if Billboard ecom brand founders need to hear this, because I'm Jesse and I've seen 50 times more brands than you have.
Yeah. For me, the big thing is don't sleep on new channels. So, many brands that have made it far enough in their journey that they need a service like HiTide, meaning they have like products that people want. They're selling those products. They're running, a machine of a company. It's easy to kind of continuously optimize what's working. And that's really important. I mean, many of the companies we work with are built off of paid ads, if not in part. I should say, if not in full, then at least in part. And the like testing and optimization of creatives, that's like kind of bread and butter of this business. But the most successful brands I've seen are carving out some mental space to try new channels or new ways to increase channels that are already working. And so I'd put HiTide in this kind of like complementary category where Instagram messaging, you're probably already using it as a brand for CX, answering support tickets, maybe inquiries about the brand. It is also an incredibly powerful way to lower customer acquisition costs and to grow your channels that are already working. So in our case, it's taking Instagram messaging, which is not a new thing, but has some new capabilities, adding it to the things that are already working in a way that's complementary and can drive really, really powerful results. In our case, that means list growth and more effective customer acquisition. And if you're kind of just staying focused on the core things that are already working and not thinking about how you can make them better by exploring new channels, it's something to consider.
I think that's very good, timeless advice, a good like foundational principle. On the other side, what is something, maybe it's not going to last forever, but some exciting, cool thing you're seeing working really well right now? Maybe it's only 2024 thing, but like what's something cool working right now in ecom?
Yeah, for us, it's the power of brand collabs, and I don't mean necessarily like co-branded products, which is like a whole nother topic, but social collabs. Instagram has, in the last year or so, given a lot more control over the ability for people to post together to multiple feeds, and that means that brands that are looking to grow their audience or looking to share audiences or exchange value in some way and drive more sales impact can publish content that will reach audiences of both brands really effectively. And we have a bunch of ideas on how to capitalize on that, but the brand collab feature within Instagram in particular is really, really exciting and starting to see a lot more utilization. But in my mind, it's still undervalued, and every brand should think about how that plays into the strategy.
I love it. Jesse, thank you for sharing your experience, your expertise with us. Who should be getting in touch with you or whoever from HiTide? How do they find you?
Thank you. So I am on Twitter. My first name's Jesse. My last name's Clemmens, Clemmens. That's the best place to reach me. Our website is gohitide.com, GOHITIDE.com, GoHiTide. And you can also find us on the Shopify App Store if you search DM list growth or list growth tools. And thank you for having me on. It's been fun to chat, and thank you for the incredible work so far with Orbit, and looking forward to talking more.